What is up, guys? That's it here with another edition of the Sanctuary Sunday. Today we're going to be talking about a lovable fellow called Inarius. We have not met him in-game, unlike other angel dudes like Tyrael and Imperius, but he was instrumental in creating the world in which we farm legendaries. Wanna know why? Listen on. At the end of times, it is more important than ever to understand the origins of our world. In the later sections of the Books of Kalan is an epic poem that tells of the renegade angel Inarius. The accounts of Inarius' life state that he was an advisor to the Anjuris Council, serving under the command of Tyrael, Archangel of Justice. It is further written that after eons of battle and witnessing countless acts of brutality, Inarius came to the conclusion that the eternal conflict was unjust, and that his part in it must come to an end. He quickly resolved to seek out others who might share his view. In time, he recruited not only angels but, incredibly, demons as well, and convinced them to join his blasphemous venture. There was one among them, however, who stood out above all others. While wounded or marooned on some broken outpost of the Pandemonium fortress, Inarius arranged to meet the demoness Lilith. Lilith, who had suffered the hatred of her father Mephisto from time immemorial, had long awaited an opportunity to rebel. And so it was that something extraordinary and unprecedented happened. For the first time ever, combatants in the eternal conflict not only set aside their differences, but also formed a union. Drawn together despite opposing forces, they had discovered common ground. It is difficult to fully grasp, but the legends tell us that Inarius and Lilith fell in love. Incredibly, that single alliance would alter the course of the war, of reality itself, and indeed of all existence. Inarius and Lilith both pledged themselves to the other and vowed to escape the eternal conflict. United in purpose, they gathered their fellow renegades and either led a campaign to capture the Worldstone or used some misdirection to gain entrance to its guarded chamber within the Pandemonium fortress. What happened next can only be conveyed through the hazy curtains of both time and myth. The Books of Kalan state the following. Inarius and his new companions altered the frequency or dimensional alignment of the Worldstone, using its power to conceal it from the angels and demons still fighting the eternal conflict. They shifted the massive crystal into a pocket dimension, and there they shaped a garden paradise around it, a world of refuge they would call Sanctuary. We cannot say how this feat was accomplished, as the means of Inarius' actions remain unknown. But it is known from the Books of Kalan and other lesser sources from this time that the eternal conflict briefly came to a grinding halt over the Worldstone's disappearance. In a way, it is amusing to think what it must have been like for the forces of heaven and hell to fight their way to the Worldstone's usual location only to find it missing. Kane speculates that for a time both groups must have accused the other of stealing it until they were finally convinced that their opponents were just as confused as they. The account given, supported by events which would come eons later, is that Inarius shaped Mount Arreat as a kind of protective shell around the Worldstone, and from there the rest of the world as we know it was formed. There, the Worldstone remained until recent times, when the angel Tyrael destroyed the sacred crystal and much of Mount Arreat surrounding it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and go back to the times when Sanctuary was first formed. That which happened next is of the utmost importance to us mortals. Indeed, had it not happened, we would not exist, for something previously unimagined took place. Inarius and Lilith mated and created offspring, and though they were the first, in time other renegade angels and demons were drawn together as well. And alas, we are of our fathers and mothers. Alike, and yet opposite, one decay and the other light. Indeed, the union of the angel and demon created a third essence, and we are those children. We are the Nephilim. We exist as half angel and half demon, yet fully a new entity. And because of our lineage, they loved us, and because of our difference, they feared us. Within the trembling balance between love and fear is the relation of us to our fathers and mothers. Much of what follows comes from fragments of the ancient tome of Druids, the Seal Fada. The first generations of Nephilim were called the Ancients. It is believed that they set out exploring, seeking answers, attempting to understand their curious world, and that they adopted numerous philosophies as they spread across Sanctuary. One of these ancients was Bul-Kathos, renowned for his immense strength, enormous size, bravery and fortitude. Bul-Kathos is revered to this very day by the barbarians who settled at Mount Arreat. Indeed, the present-day barbarians epitomize many of the ancients' traits: great size, strength, tenacity, and iron will. Barbarian myths tell of Bul-Kathos's younger brother, named Vasily. One myth in particular paints Vasily as a frustrated sibling who struck out into the wild and developed an affinity for nature. In this version of the tale, Vasily's descendants became the Druids. We know of other Nephilim of this age also. Esu, a woman drawn to the power and ferocity of the elements, gained mastery over the powers of storm, earth, fire, and water through intense meditation. Ages later, her followers would rise as the feared sorcerers of Khagistan. Finally, we come to Rathma, a brooding, solitary being who sought out the deep recesses of the world. He studied the cycle of life and death and taught it to those willing to venture into his subterranean habitat. Rathma is the patron of the necromancers, and he values the balance of light and dark above all things. It is important to note that thousands or perhaps tens of thousands of ancients doubtlessly existed during this time. It is possible or even likely that they possessed abilities beyond our understanding. Who's to say what tales of these demigods have been lost over time? The powers of the ancients had an unexpected effect on their otherworldly parents. The renegade angels and demons began to see that their Nephilim children were far more powerful than they. This, for obvious reasons, raised concern amongst them that the Nephilim might not only become a threat, but also draw the attention of the heavens and hells from which they hid. We must remember that, by commingling, these angels and demons had spawned what their masters would deem the ultimate blasphemy, and the defectors were convinced that they would be destroyed if their hidden refuge was ever discovered. Because of this, conflict arose, as many of the renegades held the opinion that their Nephilim offspring should be destroyed, while others believed that their children should be spared. This dissension troubled Inarius, who called for a period of reflection, and so his followers agreed to consider the matter in solitude. The purge that followed is described in an anonymous text found in the Great Library at Chaldeum. Lilith, the first mother of the Nephilim, was driven into a mad frenzy by the threat of her children's extinction. She morphed into a far more horrific form than any had ever seen, of tooth and claw, of spike and blade, and hunted down her fellow renegades. She ruthlessly murdered each and every follower of Inarius, leaving only him to discover the carnage she had wrought. Inarius was horrified by the loss of his comrades and the terrible deed that his lover had committed. Though enraged, he could not bring himself to kill Lilith, but instead banished her from the sanctuary they had made. Inarius then attuned the Worldstone to cause the powers of the Nephilim to diminish over time. He then disappeared, though some say that he still walks amongst us in a form more closely resembling our own. And thus ends this week's Sanctuary Sunday. I hope you enjoyed the tale of Inarius and Lilith, and if you did, I would appreciate your subscription to my channel. You can also watch me live at twitch.tv/TheDeadSet, talk to me on Twitter and Facebook that I linked below, and I'll see you guys next time.